Welcome to Wagons of Steel. It's a party and everyone's invited. This week I'm going to talk about drag racing 101, what got me into it, and maybe a few things I wish I'd known in the beginning. And if you're new to the sport or you're interested in it, maybe I'll teach you a couple of things that you won't have to learn the hard way. So with that, first things first, here's a picture of my old Mighty Josephine at the top of her game that my friend Sarah sent me. It's in the shop that we're sitting in right now, and there's not even garage doors yet. That's my dog Dottie there. Some of you may remember her. See all kinds of interesting things about that car. That was my was it my first? Yeah, Josephine was the first car I went racing in. And that was the last version of Josephine. You can see she's fully lighted up. My friend Jack got a vinyl machine. This is back in like year 2000 maybe earlier. It could be the late 90s. I think it is the late 90s. And so it's got the Wagons of Steel lettering on it in chrome. I was sponsored by Napa, Vashon Auto Parts, Bob's Bakery, Dimitri's Bloody Mary seasonings, Flash Photo, and who else? Tom Matson Dodge. They used to kick me down some stuff. Those were the days. If you've been watching my videos, you've seen this. This is the Mighty Josephine today. Still got the wagon power there. A friend of mine told me a long time ago, never get rid of your old race cars. Which, I don't know. It's kind of cool, you know. Instead of slime green, you can still see the slime green paint here a little bit. See where the lettering used to be. I've learned a lot about racing in this car. Here she is earlier on in her racing career. It's hard to even see from here, but this whole front end area of the car, the whole front fenders, both sides, the car had been jumped pretty extensively, and way before I owned it, and so it was really beat up. And I kind of learned a lot about body work, and bent it out, and made it look like it was made it look better than it actually was, but good enough for a race car, but it wasn't that great. And so when I had the opportunity to find another front end, I jumped on it and I put the front sheet metal on, and then promptly, I didn't lose interest, but the car was not the big C bodies like that, the giant Chryslers, and I'm sure the big Ford Country Squires, and what would the Chevy be, the Impalas, and the giant cars. People do race them, and they are cool race cars, let me tell you. But they're really uncommon, and so you're not going to get any off-the-shelf race car stuff for those without. You're just not gonna. So you have to make it yourself, which is a good learning experience. But I decided I wanted to get a car that was easier to race, and that was why I stepped up to the Plymouth Belvedere, which is a very common platform for drag racing. What makes a good race car is, we're all in this for fun, so a lot of it is you just have to pick whatever turns you on. I mean, a lot of times it'll be, a car that you loved when you were a kid, or a car that you love now. Maybe you are into a car club, like there's a lot of car club drags where a bunch of people who all have, Ford Mustangs or Dodge Challengers or Chevy Camaros, or they all get together and they, go to the races on Car Club Day, and they all race against other car clubs. Or there's just basic bracket racing, and that's broken down into, it varies from track to track, but in general, you've got cars that do the quarter mile in 12 seconds and slower is sportsman. And then you've got cars that go faster than 12 seconds down to, I think, 9s is pro. And then 12 seconds and like down into the 7s, I believe, is super pro. And they're allowed to run electronics, which means you, like, typically in a sportsman or pro, your car, the way you launch it is the way you would leave a stoplight. More aggressively, obviously. You put one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas, and when it's time to leave, you stomp the gas and let off the brake, and there you go. Whereas the electronics in Super Pro, when it's time to go, you let go of a button, or there's a button attached to the gas pedal, and it usually, typically, it'll be attached to a trans brake, which is a race-only function of the transmission, which allows you to put the gas pedal all the way to the floor, and the car goes nowhere until you let go of the button, and then the transmission activates and you're on your way. So that's typically, unless you come from a racing family and these type of cars are around, for you to use, you'll start in pro or, sportsman, because the button electronic stuff is something you learn later on. It's a little more complicated, I guess. So, picking a car, I recommend everyone starts in sportsman. I think I had my best year ever in local bracket races with I was talking to somebody about this morning. It was my 64 Plymouth Valiant was the car. Ronaldo the Valiant, and he ran 18-second quarter miles. And it was because all my faster cars were cooked, which is another thing to think about with drag racing. Picking a car is, speed. How fast your car goes. It determines whether you. If your car is faster than 12 seconds in the quarter mile, then you have to be in pro instead of sportsman. But in general, the difference between an 18-second sportsman car and a 12-second sportsman car is how fast you feel like going. The rules are the same, and you can win the same amount of money, and your likelihood of winning is the same. It's you can decide whether you want to be the car that goes faster, which typically you do. Because you're out drag racing because you want to go drag racing, which it can be. Usually it's like you want to be fast, but newsflash, the fastest guys are running Super Pro or in the pro categories, and they're way faster and they have way more money and will never be as fast as they are. So you kind of have to pick your plan, like how fast do I really want to be going, and what, like if I had settled for running Ronaldo the Valiant and 18.6s, I probably overall would have won a bunch more trophies and money than I have in my drag racing career, because that car, it was so mellow. Like, you didn't break anything ever, really. It's just as long as you change the oil once in a while and make sure there's transmission fluid in it, and that you don't run out of gasoline. It would always go down the track at the same amount of time, and that's how you win races. If you can cut a light, if your reaction time is good and you run the number that you wrote on your windshield, the chances are very good that you're going to win, whether you're running 12 flat or 18.6. So if you can stand running 18.6s and you can cut a perfect light, you're the master of your domain. Once you've picked a car that you like, a car that you want to race, it's not a good idea to drive it on the street. There are lots of people out there who race their daily drivers and drive to the track, and Lord knows I've raced my tow vehicle before, and it's not something that I prefer to do. A regular car is it's not going to be consistent in the way that a race car can be. Race cars are a drag car is designed to go in a straight line from the starting line to the finish line and do it the same way every time. And some, like a reliable car, the same thing is true with a race car or a daily driver. You want it to start up when you turn the key to go to work or go racing. But you don't want to worry about the stuff that can happen to your driver happening in your race car. I mean, it's does a Coke can come out from under the seat and lodge itself under your brake pedal, or did you run out of gas, or did you put wear on your transmission that causes it to function differently than the last time you went racing? So, I mean, you do what you got to do. If you're brand new and you're just learning how to race, it's very unlikely that you're going to win the track championship in the first year anyways. The more seat time you get, the better. So just roll out and do what you got to do, but just know that the ideal is to bring your race car to the track on a trailer and only use it for racing, and that's just something to aspire to. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, so you're not going to necessarily be able to do it right away. I mean, I know that I started when I was very, very poor and I had to run my car, and I mean, I remember driving that Mighty Josephine around when she had no back seat and no sound deadening of any kind, no headliner, and man, it was so loud, and there's no heater, so it was freezing, and you could barely see out the windshield in the wintertime, and it was I did what I had to do. But if you're plan on having a car strictly for racing and bringing it to the track on a trailer, ideally. And buying a trailer and tow rig, all of it's the same. If you keep saving up your money and have cash on hand for when you see a good deal, you'll save yourself a lot of money. I've heard it said, and it's true, it's very expensive to be poor. And this is one of those ways. Lord knows how many credit cards I've burned up buying stuff to put race cars together, and then they're all paid off now. It's all's well that ends well, but the easy way to do it would have been to save up a bunch of money first. And then the big decision you have to make when you are getting ready to go racing is, do you buy a race car or do you build a race car? A lot of times, like when you're in sportsman, there really isn't that much you have to do to make your car race ready. But if you buy a car that somebody's already been racing, then it'll pass tech, and it's theoretically okay as a race car. The faster you get, the more you have to worry about stuff being worn out and used up. I'm not going to go off into stock eliminator stuff this video, but I know that when I see people buy and sell stock eliminator cars, and usually or super stock, you don't want somebody else's engine. You want to build your engine yourself and know what's going on, so you're not getting a bunch of old junk or used up, tired out stuff, which I guess could be said for anything in a car. I learned this the hard way. You need to get the strongest axle assembly that you can. Mopars, they come with what's known as the 8 3/4 rear end, which I can't remember what the name of it. There's English inventors invented the two different types of rear ends. One, the whole unit drops out. That's like what the 8 3/4 is, and the Ford 9-inch. So you could you've got your whole gear set, you pull the axles out a little bit, and then you just put that chunk in there, and you can change your gears. And it's certainly come in handy for me in the past. I used to, it's not the heaviest duty, but it's the second from the heaviest duty that Mopar comes with, and it's not enough. Yeah, you blow them up the most inconvenient of times. They skin the teeth off the ring gear. There's lots of people who tell you it's the best, and like you can cryogenically treat the ring and pinion gears, deep freeze them, and then they're supposedly harder or whatever, which costs hundreds of dollars. The center section costs hundreds of dollars. If you blow 3 up a year, it costs thousands of dollars, which is pretty much what I was up to. And finally, I started getting the Dana 60, which is an outside vendor. It's a really it's the strongest rear end they ever put in a Mopar car. I think they made Dana 70s and 80s that they put in big diesel trucks, but the Dana 60 is the go-to. It's like the one that came in the 4-speed Hemi Barracudas and the 446-pack Roadrunners and anything with a 4-speed and a lot of power. They would put the Dana in because then it just didn't. We haven't killed one yet. Mike and I, we're dueling to see who can blow one up first, and we haven't done it yet. And so, the 8 3/4 maybe a little bit faster. I know with like Chevy guys, they have the 10 bolt and the 12 bolt, and the 10 bolt is arguably the fastest, least resistance rear end there is, I've heard. So like you could theoretically, I don't think they've ever checked what kind of rear end I'm running in my car. When they inspect me, you could theoretically put a 10 bolt rear end in your Mopar or your Ford or whatever, but that'd be insane, because one thing about drag racing is you can't win the race if you're sitting on the starting line with the rear end broken. It just, you're not going anywhere, and the guy in the other lane can push his car off the starting line and beat you. Speaking as a guy who races a car that has an engine that was only available for half of 1964, I have to say, if you can, pick a common combination. Pick something that you can always get parts for, even if you're racing way out of state in some obscure location. Like Chevy 409s, Buick 401s, Max Wedge 426s, any of the like Pontiac 327, any of the really obscure stuff. It's Buick 455, anything by Oldsmobile. I love all that stuff. I think that stuff is great, and it's so cool that people are out racing it and keeping it alive. But boy, it's hard. There's no chapter on Buick engines in the Summit catalog, and I have to talk to an automotive historian to figure out like the part numbers for my Max Wedge stuff. But if you race like a Fox body Mustang with a 5-liter in it, that there's a whole chapter for you in the Summit Racing catalog. And 350 Chevys, they practically throw them away. So when you're picking your combination, if you can, go with God. Do what you have to do. It's up to you, but if you can, pick a common combination so that it's easier to deal with that aspect. You don't need to make stuff hard for yourself if you can avoid it. One of my favorite things about drag racing and being at the drag strip is people in general at the drag strip are very friendly and helpful. And if you ever have questions, you should ask them, because most of the time you'll find somebody who can answer them. I mean, take it with a grain of salt. There's sometimes people who will purposefully not give you the correct answer, and there's some things that people don't want to tell you about, especially if you're in stock eliminator or super stock, or they don't want to tell you some of their secrets, and some people don't want to tell you what kind of cam they're running in their car, whatever. But if you're able to be respectful, they'll tell you all kinds of stuff about what gear ratio works best with a certain type of engine, where the porta potties are, why you shouldn't eat hot dogs at this particular track, and it's good to ask questions and good to be friendly with your neighbors and help people out and have people help you out, and we're all in it to have a good time together. Super cool to bring kids to the racetrack. They really love it, and then they get to learn about cars and friends and responsibility, and that you're the cool neighbor. You get what you pay for. Some stuff you really shouldn't cut corners on, some stuff you can, but some stuff like transmissions, torque converters, clutches, rear gear assemblies, that stuff you really don't want to cut corners on, because it'll break and you will not be able to continue racing. It's under ideal circumstances, you want to be the reason you lost, not your equipment. Be nice to the officials. Be extra nice to them. Especially be nice to the person who sits in that booth that gives you the time slip at the end, and the person who texts your car. And if you see the manager, the director, any of those guys who have to listen to a bunch of crap all day long from people who think that they're superior, be nice to them too. Be nice to all of those guys and gals, because they don't really get paid very much, and the nicer you are to them, the more they're going to remember you and be nice to you. If they have to, toss a coin to figure out who wins in an argument, and one's the person who's always nice to them and brings them a cup of coffee and says you're doing a great job, and the other one's the person who's always bitching and moaning, they're usually going to go in the direction of the nice person. So in your own self-interest and just to be a nice person, be good to the people who work at the track. Remember to have a good time. It's fun. That's why you went out. Don't get too carried away with losing and rehashing why you lost, and just enjoy yourself. And you can always come back and try it again later. Just tighten up your seatbelts and enjoy the company, and have fun.